I was with the State Patrol for 22 years. I did my first gig in the metro area, which include I-25, the Mousetrap area, the Boulder Turnpike, and then it was strictly Adams County. That's another thing the state would do. They would assign troops to counties instead of towns. And that way, when you wrote your citation covered accidents, all you'd have to do is go to one court. You wouldn't have to go to multiple jurisdictions. So, but I started in 1973, and before I got into my first State Patrol Academy, I tried 2 other times to get in. I scored high enough to pass the written, but they put you on a high to low score, and if you didn't score high enough and there wasn't enough openings, you wouldn't get it. So I lost out on the first one in Colorado because of that. Then things weren't going good. I wasn't making any money, so I moved to Nevada, thinking that Nevada would be a good place, and that was another year of my life that I threw away. But I also tried for the Nevada Highway Patrol, scored high there too, and on the way to the oral boards, I helped a citizen change a tire, and I took off my tie and my jacket, and I forgot to put the tie back on. And during my oral interview, I was asked a bunch of high pressure questions, and they were trying to find out if you were nervous, jittery, or how you would handle high level stuff like that. And I thought I did okay. And when I went out in the waiting room, and I sat with my wife, and when they came out, they called me back in. They said, "Boy, you did really good, but we sure would like to see you if you'd had a tie on, because we want to see if you would squirm." And I lost out because I didn't get a tie. I didn't wear a tie, so they couldn't really test me out on that. So we moved back to Colorado, and in '73 I joined the Colorado State Patrol and got my first assignment. And we were on our own for about 2 weeks when a trooper friend of mine, he got assigned to the I-25 that morning, and I was assigned the Boulder Turnpike. So we would just make loops during rush hour traffic, making sure there was no broken down cars and traffic was flowing. You really didn't write tickets during rush hour just because your red lights would create a problem and people slowed down just to see what you was doing.
That's a good thing to know.
So when we do what?
I said that's a good thing to know.
That's back in 1973. I must admit, might have changed since then, but so anyway, at about, I want to say about 8:20, something like that, I got a notification from the dispatcher. Well, dispatcher came out and made a broadcast that attention all troopers, 1079. We all used the 10 code back then. 1079 was go to the nearest pay telephone, no cell phone, go to the nearest pay telephone and call dispatch, because we have to tell you. That's all. 1079 said all that when you heard that. So I went, and funny how this worked, but we had our ticket book. It was a triangle type thing, and you opened up, it had a flap in there. We always had 2 dimes taped to the inside of our ticket book for the cell phone. If a sergeant would check ride you, he would ask for your ticket book. If you didn't have 2 dimes in there, you would get it written up for not being proactive. So anyway, I made the phone call, and I was told, they said, "Trooper Bartholomew, we've had an officer that's been shot and killed in the Denver area, Montbello," and I said, do we know who it was? And they said, "Yeah, it was Tom Carpenter." Well, that's the guy I went to work with that morning. We sat and had coffee that morning, and so what we think has happened is during the loops on the on-ramp from Broadway to westbound Boulder Turnpike, there was a car with 2 people in it. Tom pulled in behind it and did a motorist assist, and basically he was kidnapped because it was a stolen car. And they got him back in his patrol car and drove off and ended up out in Montbello, and the car got stuck, and they panicked, and they had his revolver, and they assassinated. They shot him in the back of the head. And so I had to go back to work, and I'm thinking, boy, this isn't TV. This is the real thing. I'm 25 years old, and I just experienced the first time somebody got killed, and I knew him, and I just didn't know what to do. So I finished my shift and came home and told my wife, and we had a little talk, and there was no counseling back then. You know, we didn't have counselors like law enforcement does now when there's a shooting or a tragedy. So that kind of opened up my eyes, and after that I started treating the training I got. Approach every vehicle that there's a bad guy in it. Think the worst when you're walking up that car, because you never know who might have a gun and who might be wanted and who might be on the lam, as they called it. And so I remained doing that for the entire rest of my career whenever I made a contact. But 22 years, I've got enough stories that I could probably, like any other police officer or law enforcement officer, write a book, because there's so many different things that happen to you out there. Some are good, some are bad. Some, you know, we talk about our military having post-traumatic stress. When you cover enough bad traffic accidents where there's been one or multiple people that have been killed in a car accident, and some of them are pretty brutal because of the steel and glass that just cuts everything up. A lot of officers have what they say ate their gun. They just can't take it, so they commit suicide, and they just can't take it, or a family disturbance, because some of them are police officers. So the first thing our captain did after Tom's funeral was over and all the dust had settled, and the investigation never did quit because we never did catch him, but they made a policy with the state patrol that every officer would have a will. It was pretty much mandatory, because Mrs. Carpenter did not have a will, and so it was really chaotic when she was trying to finalize things, and so we made sure that there was a will. So that's the first thing I did, and I've kept that up pretty much since. But there's some funnier stuff that makes the job kind of enjoyable, and they're not necessarily an everyday occurrence. But I had a deputy district attorney who wanted to do a ride-along with me, and we was working the evening shift. It was wintertime, and we got a call to a car off the road, and unknown of his injury, so I did the lights and siren, and we got there, and the car was off the road. It was a car that went broadside and slid up a guardrail, because they're ground level, and then they go up to about 3 feet, and he was just sitting there, his back tire was just spinning, and he was just driving down the road. And so I walked up to his car with the deputy district attorney and knocked on the window, and he kind of he did a double take on me, and I said, roll down your window. So he slowly rolled down his window, and I said, I need you to put the car in park. He says, how fast are you going? I said, well, I'm not the one we're worried about. It's you that I have to worry about. You're the one that's going too fast, so we need to put it in park. He said, puts on his brake, puts it in park, and I said, go ahead and shut it off. So he shuts it off, and I said, hand me the keys. He says, you gonna drive now? I said, no, I'm not the one that's gonna be driving. I said, I just need your keys. I know he's not gonna go anywhere, but anyway. So this district attorney, his deputy, he just laughed his ass off. He said, I can't believe this. And I said, I can't either. You know, first time I ever had one of these happen to me, and I said, I have to keep a straight face because it's really hilarious. So make the arrest. He comes back intoxicated, and I go to court. And when I go to court, court doesn't happen tomorrow. When you write a ticket, the dockets get so filled that there's a lot of time waiting. So in the time that before I went to court on this guy, the deputy district attorney got appointed to a county judge. And when I came in and he read the ticket, we was getting ready to go to court, and I saw him and he saw me, and he read the ticket. He says, I have to excuse myself from this ticket, this case, and we moved to another courtroom, and after it was all over with, obviously he was found guilty, not only because of the blood alcohol he had, but the circumstances, and we had a tough time getting that car off the guardrail too. But anyway, so that was a very fun experience. I had a friend riding with me, and this is the way I really should do this interview sometime, is we was going to Brighton for a funeral for a veteran, and about every time we got into a different place in Adams County, I would tell my friend, which happened to be Brad Hoops, I'd say, oh, this happened here. And I probably told about 5 or 6 stories before we got to our destination, because you got 20 or 17 years in one area, you have a tendency to remember a lot of different things that happened to you, because, but anyway, so another time I nice weather, and I always like to say this, the car that I stopped this time was going from the shoulder of the road all the way over to the median wall, and then back at about 45 miles an hour. And he was just doing a pretty good job, just going back and forth. So as we say, I lit him up, put the lights on, and he was on that side. They turned on his turn signal all the way across, got over the shoulder and stopped, and I walked up, and he rolled down his window, and he had to be in a 4-door sedan, and I said, I need to see your driver's license and your registration and your insurance card. He said, all right. So he gets out his wallet, and I said, there it is. Right there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You passed it. 3 times he went by his driver's license. I didn't need the registration, but I could get it off of the license plate. Did need the insurance card. And finally, I said, just give me your name and your date of birth. I said, well, we'll go that route. And I said, he gets, step back a little bit. He gets out of his car, and he slides down the side of his car because he can't stand up. He's coming back to the back of the car to meet me. And I said, sir, I said, please. I said, for your safety and my safety, I said, I need to have you get back in the vehicle, if you would, please, and we'll handle it from the car. And he said, all right. So he gets in the back seat, which is fine to me, okay? I didn't have to take the keys, and he gets in, and I, Mr. So-and-so, I said, I'll be back, and I told my dispatcher that I'd had what we called a 1055, a drunk driver, and I was going to be processing him and doing roadside stuff like this. So I walked back up to the car, and I tap on the window, and he rolls down his window, and he says, wait a minute. Before you start in, he said, I want to report a theft. And I said, well, what's been stolen? He says, my radio. They left the music, but they took my radio, and I don't like this song. And I said, well, he says, how's it got my steering wheel? I got the dash here. So he's grabbing the back seat, the padded dash. So anyway, I said, sir, I said, you're in the back seat of your car. And he, I think I've had too much to drink. So that kind of helped my case, all the other stuff involved in it. So we make the arrest, and we go to court, and his defense attorney comes to me and says, is there any chance this is not true? I said, no, it's pretty true. I said, that's what he did. He said, boy, he says, I don't want to get this in front of a jury. He says, is there any way we can plea bargain this? I said, well, you talk to the DA, and if he's got a good record, I said, I have no problem bringing it down to a lesser offense. We brought it down from a DUI to an impaired, and the guy met me after it was all done. He says, boy, he says, I sure thank you for that. He says, can I have a copy of that? I says, yeah, and share it with everybody. Tell them how it's not good to drink and drive. And I meant to start out the whole conversation. When I tell that particular story, I say, and he was an older gentleman. He was about 35, because I was only 25. So he was an older gentleman at that time. I had to respect his age, right? So, an old man. So, So, let's see where I can go. A sad episode in the life of a law enforcement officer. I was called to assist another officer in a truck car accident, and it was I-76 in the Bar Lake Road in Adams County, and it's kind of an angled road that comes off onto the interstate, and those angled roads are very tough. They're very bad to have because you have to look pretty much over your shoulder. If there's somebody that on the other side, they're looking at the same time, so you're looking at their head, you have to get them back. So the family of 9 pulled out in front of a semi, and it basically burst the car into flames, threw it off the side, and it was still burning when we got there. There was 3 of us officers that got there to help investigate this scene, and there was nothing we could do for him. Not a fire extinguisher big enough, and the fire trucks weren't there yet, and you just heard him screaming, and there's just nothing you could do. And I'd heard stories from way back where they actually something like this would happen, and the officer went up and shot the person so they wouldn't be in. But that's not legal, that's assisted killing. I don't know what they call it, but I just know I couldn't, even though I wanted to that day. That was in the evening. So there was a situation that was pretty terrible, and when I lost my train of thought here. Oh, Christmas Eve. I got more bad stories than I got good stories. That's the problem with being in law enforcement. There's not very many funny situations, but I was working Christmas Eve, and a family, 2 cars. One was mom and dad and the 2 kids, and then behind was grandma and grandpa, and they was going over to mom and dad's house, and grandma and grandpa was following, and a pickup ran a stop sign in a residential area, 20 on the residential, 35 on the bigger street. It was broadside hit, and it was a little 4-door station wagon, and when the pickup was 4-door pickup, when it hit it threw the force to where the driver's door came open, and the occupant of that front seat was violently thrown this way, and then it hit a curb, and then the door came back and trapped her between the undercarriage of the car, and then it continued on the curb, and basically just, and I'm sorry to get gruesome, but it just drug her to death if she didn't die instantly. And then one of the little girls in the back seat was ejected out of the passenger back door. The window was broken, and she hit the curb and killed her. And then the father and the dad, or the father and the other daughter, were both just pretty beat up. But as I was gathering evidence, I was the assisting officer on that one, and as I was gathering evidence and driver's license and dates of birth, stuff like this, it was kind of surreal that the father was born the same year I was, the mother was born the same year my wife was, and my wife was a year older than I was. So, and then the 2 daughters, one was born on the exact same day as my oldest daughter, and then the youngest one had the first same name as my youngest daughter. So when I was putting all this stuff together, it was kind of, giving me chills, but the investigation goes on, and that night we had 2 Flight for Life helicopters land on a residential street, which, thank you your older towns, and the streets are not very wide if you got cars on them, and you put a chopper down in these streets at night with no LSO landing signalman or anything like that, and all of our chopper pilots in those days were all Vietnam era chopper pilots, either Hueys or 46s or 47s, whatever. But boy, those guys can put it down on a dime, and we needed them, and got the people to the hospital. And then following up the accident was the driver of the pickup, now this is part of the surreal stuff, the driver of the pickup was from the hometown of my wife's younger sister, next door neighbor from Kansas, and so this just adds to the history. So it was, and then he bought his way out of a vehicular homicide ticket. He got vehicular manslaughter for killing those two because he was under the influence. But he had rich parents, political parents, and this is something that can never be proved. It's just my gut feeling, knowing the family, that he bought his way out of a pretty long prison sentence. And so after that accident was all over with and the dust settled, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers was coming to light. It was becoming a big thing, and there was a big organization started. And the pictures that I took of the accident scene and the surviving sister became a poster. So my picture was in her the picture I took of the crash, and then her picture was all over state of Colorado for the Mothers Against Drunk Driving campaign. So every time I saw that poster, I had to remember that, and not that it affected me, but here again, you're talking about post-traumatic stress. You know, there's an awful lot of stuff in law enforcement's day of life that can affect you. And here again, we never had counselors. I was a motorcycle officer, and being a motorcycle officer is kind of fun. It was during the Sega, the TV show Chips, if anybody remembers that. So Ponch and John, right? Yeah. And Colorado never had partners, but one day I had a Spanish officer was on a motorcycle. I was on a motorcycle, and we got together and said, "Hey, let's do Chips." And I said, "Nah, not really a good idea." So, yeah, it was a good idea. So we decided to do it. We'd work in I-25, and we didn't have radar equipment on our motorcycle, so the way we would clock speeders, we would pace them. And we would set our speedometer at a certain mile an hour. Like if we're in a 55 mile an hour zone, I would sit on the 55 with my speedometer, and if that car in front of me gained distance, it was doing 55. So if I set it at 75 and that car in front of me pulled away from me, they were doing more than 75 miles an hour, so I could write them a ticket for 75. And I had to have my speedometer calibrated and all that stuff. But we stopped this one car just north of 58, northbound on I-25, mom and two kids. Kid on the driver's side was probably 9, 10 years old, and the other one was a lot smaller. And as we walk up to them, one on one car and on one side, one on the other side, and mom rolls down the window, and they're electric windows, and the kid rolls down his window and says, "Mom, you done got busted by Chips." And that did not make the mother very happy. She was kind of upset because son was having fun and she wasn't. And we never went to court on it, but she did get a ticket for whatever the speed limit was. But then there was an armed robbery in Denver. And the car was northbound I-25 approaching 50th Avenue, and I was on a motorcycle. And you see cars who try to help block off, or they do the pit maneuver now, stuff like this. Well, I'm 20-something years old and invincible, and no harm can come to me. And he got on a secondary road, and I was in front of him, so I parked my motorcycle, stood behind it, as it was going to protect me from a car hitting me at a certain mile per hour. But I had my gun out, and my gun and my motorcycle scared the hell out of him. I know I didn't, but boy, I tell you what, after I got done, I thought, that was not really smart. It worked, but it was not very smart. Yeah. So another embarrassing moment that I had is I was on a Harley Davidson 66 Harley, and the state had just paved I-25, and August, hot, and I got a speeder, and then I stopped him, and we now park at an angle, but back then I just parked parallel with him, and brand new asphalt, 85, 90 degrees.
I know it's coming.
Yeah.
Close. It even gets worse than that. I'm right on the edge of the pavement, which I didn't think. So I'm walking up to the car, and I hear, and I see a smile on the driver's face, and I'm thinking. So I walk up to the car, didn't even look back. I walked up and said, "Sir, the reason I stopped you was for blah, blah, blah. I need to see your driver's license registration." And I looked back and I said, "Oh." My motorcycle went down the embankment.
Oh, no.
So the asphalt got soft from the weight of my motorcycle and sunk enough to where it just tipped. And that's the crash I heard. Nobody ran into it. So
How much did that bike weigh?
about 700, 800 pounds.
Jeez.
It's almost too heavy to pick up.
Yeah.
Well, not if you're embarrassed. So I had his driver's license. I said, "Sir, this is your lucky day." I said, "I have some pressing business that I have to take care of." And I said, "Right now it's more important than writing you a ticket, so have a nice day. Here's your stuff." And oh God, all the horns are honking, people waving, laughing, and they see my bike down there. And so I go down there, and yeah, that's a heavy motorcycle, but the adrenaline gets up, and I put the kickstand down, and I do an inspection. Now it's got a plexiglass windshield, real soft. At 85, 90 miles an hour, that plexiglass window that windshield comes down, and you ain't got no protection whatsoever because the windshield is weak. So anyway, that's the only thing that kind of folded. It didn't break it. So I called my supervisor on the radio, and I told him, I said, "Could you meet me just north of 58th Avenue southbound?" I said, "I got a situation I'd like to talk to you about." So by this time, I'm back up on the road, and that's not a dirt bike. So it's a heavy motorcycle. So I'm not going to go up the bank. So I have to walk it up the dirt and get it up there and park a little closer to the white line this time.
Were you able to start it?
So yeah, so I wouldn't do it twice. Huh?
Were you able to start it?
Oh yeah. It started. It landed on its side, and it wasn't down there very long to where the fuel didn't get in the carburetors and gum it up and no dirt. But he got down there and he says, "What in the hell happened?" I said, "On my way to a ticket. You'll never believe what happened to me." And he said, "Well, is there any damage to the bike?" And I said, "I've looked at it." I said, "You're an ex-bike rider." I said, "You take a look." And I said, "If it's an accident, it's an accident. If it's not," or he said, "If it's an accident, I'll write it up as an incident report. If it's an accident, I'll write it up as an accident. And if it writes up as an accident, I lose all my accident-free miles." You type you crash a vehicle, you lose your miles, and you save what you got, but you're suspended from gaining. So he wrote up an incident report, and that worked out pretty good. I must admit. There is, and I thought that I was going to have so much to talk about, but if you stop and think about it, 22 years trying to cram it in, and I'm trying to think of some other funny stories that, I'm going to throw another sad one in. This is another one that is kind of for the record books. Out on US 85, coming from Fort Lumpen into Brighton. It's a 4-lane road, state highway, federal highway, and it's taken by divided by a median, and we get a call that there's a car truck accident, which kind of was a car accident involving a truck, but never hit a truck, on the County Line Road southbound at 85. So we get there, and what had happened, big dump truck pulling secondary dump truck across the highway with a 2-inch cable, because the second one, but the first truck stops on the shoulder of the southbound lane and the second truck's in the median on the southbound lane, so there's an invisible cable that's going across the southbound lanes, and yes, a car goes under it, and it literally decapitates 3 people in the front seat, a mother, father, and a daughter. And the parents were in their late 70s, and daughter was in her early 50s, and as I approached the scene from the south, traffic had been shut off. Brighton Police Department was helping us, and the Sheriff's Department. And as I was approaching the scene, there was a blanket laying in the northbound lanes of 85. And a good trooper always takes debris off the highway, so I thought, well, I'll take it. And I'm hearing, Bart, 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 don't. And I did, and there was a head that had come basically catapulted, and that image kind of stuck in my my head for a long time also, and I just put it down, and I just helped with the investigation and went on. And that's another thing when you're in law enforcement, you run into situations where you would like to stop and go home and cry, and you can't because you've got a job to do. And it's one of those, wow, you just got to put the hat on a little bit tighter and pull up your pants and get the job done, and then later on let her go if you can. And speaking of another one, this is really has nothing to do with the traffic accident. It was just I happened to be in the area at the right time. Way back when the volunteer firefighters would drive their own vehicle with their own little lights, most of them didn't have sirens, and they were wanted and needed, but they were also a pain in the butt because they thought they were a great big police vehicle or a fire truck and could do anything, and they really didn't. They caused more accidents than we would like to talk about. But I followed one time because I saw how he was driving. It was not safe, so I was going to have a talk with him. And when I got to where he was going, it was a house fire, and he got busy, and I basically forgot why I was there, and I just offered the people there if there was anything I could do to help, and they said, well, we can't. Mom and Dad's gone. Big brother, who was 10, was taking care of little sister, and we can't find little sister. And then they worry about that. There are firefighters in there, and they're going through everything they can trying to find her, calling out her name, and finally one of the firefighters heard it, and she was hiding under a bed, which, that's what they do. They get scared, they hide. And he brought her out, and she was unresponsive when he got her outside. And if anybody's ever done first aid to an infant, you know that your breaths into the mouth have got to be pretty small, because if not, you will bypass the lungs and you'll blow up the stomach. You can actually do that. And I saw that was happening with a firefighter, young kid, probably 19 years old, and I just tapped him on the shoulder just out of courtesy, said, hey, can I give you a spell, give you a break? And he says, yeah. So never did say anything. The other officers knew what was going on, and we got a breath and we got a pulse, and they rushed her off the hospital, and I went and did my shift. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. I was working 7 to 3 shift, and got done with my shift and got back to the shop, and I picked up the telephone and I called the hospital. I said, hey, I'm Trooper Bartholomew. I'd like to know how the little girl that was brought in from such and such a location in the house fire. And they said, well, sorry to tell you, but she didn't make it. So, it was sad, and I was just finished my reports and went home. And when I got home, and I'd been on the patrol for probably about, I'm going to say maybe 2-3 years. So I had a routine, and my wife knew the routine. And as I was getting ready for bed, she said, what's the matter? You never said that before. So my body language was doing something that she recognized as I walked in and I was getting ready for bed, and I sat down and I told her, and I just cried like a baby for about 2 or 3 minutes and sniffled it up and wiped my nose and could finish the story. But how can you not have feelings when you're doing something like this. And in the military, since we're all military here, how can you not do your job when you're in the military? It's the same thing. Sometimes you got an ugly job to do, and sometimes you're given orders to do it. So it's all kind of full circle. But I would not trade my 22 years for anything. I also was good enough in recovering stolen vehicles that I was asked to be TDY with the auto theft division out of Denver headquarters, and I got onto a case with my fellow officer, and we recovered over $3 million worth of cars in 6 months, and there was 2 homicides in it, and it was a 4-state case.
Wow.
And these guys were very sophisticated. The FBI was watching them. In fact, the FBI had you see on TV, they had the fake van with the fake sign on it and stuff like that, and they had all their electronics and stuff like that, and their bugging devices. And the bad guys realized who they were, and basically without unplugging the plug from the socket, they disconnected all their power. So all their surveillance was gone, and they got all their evidence out of there, and so we had to pretty much start from scratch. But being an auto theft investigator was also a fun time. I did more investigation on gangs, like motorcycle gangs, posse comitatus, which are the ones that really don't believe in the legal system, and they don't do driver's license and registration, and they have their own little world. And what I found out here again on a multi-state jurisdiction is how many encampments our United States have with these people in the backwoods that have everything. They got all the surveillance, they got all the electronics. You can't see them from the air, you can't see them from the ground. You have to walk right up and get there, and they know when you're coming. They got traps and stuff like that make noise. So the bad guys usually a lot smarter than the cops, you know. And most bad guys have been arrested enough time, they learn what they did wrong the first time or the second time, and they don't get it wrong the third time. So, I honestly keep going, and I think that's probably enough.
You can talk about governor's mansion.
Whoa.
Talk about the when you testified at the state capitol on the change to law, and talk about the state fair.
Oh, all right, yeah. Thanks, Brett. I guess I got a few more minutes. and if anybody else has any questions, in '74, the year after I came on, I got assigned to the governor's detail, and since the governor's a state employee, his protection is the state patrol, and there's a detail that works at the Capitol, the annex downtown, and then there's also a detail that does the mansion. So my first day, and Dick Lamb was the governor. My first day to go down to the governor's mansion, I come and the senior officers give me the ropes. He's showing me the lower level of the mansion and where the cameras are located and all the stuff. And I kind of had a short tour before, but I'd never been upstairs. And the next level is the governor's living quarters. That's where the governor and his family live. And it's kind of an oval shape where all the rooms are. And so when they walk out of one room to go to another room, they're out there in this middle of this opening. So here I am with this senior officer upstairs in the living area of the governor, and the governor walks out. And he politely says, "Good morning, officers." I said, "Good morning, Governor." And the other guy says, good morning, Governor. And now I realize we're in trouble because he stuttered. And when you stutter, you're doing something wrong. So downstairs we went right away. And I still didn't think too much about it until the sergeant came down after this jerk was gone, who got me in trouble, and said, "What the hell was you doing up on the second floor?" Following the other officer. I didn't know it was the living quarters. And he said, well, the governor called the lieutenant called me, and I says, you're talking to me. So yeah, shit runs downhill, so here I am. So I did not get in trouble, the other officer did, but I learned my lesson. And I drove Dick Lamb, just many different places, and I also was a bodyguard for his two children, Heather and Scott. Scott was about 11, 12 years old, no, 13, 14. He had to go to hunter safety course, and I had to take him. And I was in uniform, had a plain car, but I was in uniform. He says, I will not be seen with a cop. So he jumps in the back seat and hides. I said, Scott, you got to get up in the seat. You got to wear your seatbelt. I'm not going any farther. But I'm not going to be seen. I said, well, let me get a sack. I'll put it over your head. He says, you wouldn't do that. I said, I would. You get up in that chair, that seat, and put your seatbelt on.
Yeah.
So he did. So that was one story. Then he's out. Our officers monitor, where we monitor the cameras and everything like that, is off the kitchen, and I'm hearing shh, shh, shh. Well, that's not a normal noise, so I go inside the kitchen, and there's Scott with the hose from the sink washing the walls. And I said, Scott, what are you doing? He says, I'm bored. Well, luckily, Mrs. Lamb, Dottie, had just came downstairs when she heard me talking. And so she was a mother this time. She wasn't the first lady, she was a mother. And Scott, Lamb, you get right upstairs and I'll deal with you later. And he goes like this to me. Well, she saw it. And Governor, if you're still alive, is he still alive?
No, he passed.
He passed, didn't he? Yeah. Okay. Mrs. Lamb, if you're watching, she slapped him across the face and like to spun his head around. But she was a mother, and she did the right thing because he had disrespect for an elder and a law enforcement officer. And under my breath, I was laughing my butt off, but I couldn't laugh while watching it. So, and Heather, she was a kind little gal. But and Brad mentioned the state fair. Again, state grounds has to be policed by the state of Colorado, which would be the State Patrol. They've been doing that for years. And I was a motorcycle officer down there for 9 years. I was a foot soldier, as they call them, the first year I was down there. And the first year I was down there, I got called to the 4-H area because of a wall jumper. Kids like to get over the wall to get in free. And all we do is we grab them by the collar of the neck and escort them out the gate. And so I walked down there. No, I was a bike officer. I walked down there, rode down there, and going through the 4-H area. Need to stop?
Yeah, I don't know, I ran out of tape. I don't know why I did that. Let me just move over here. Sorry about that.
You're gonna have to start from the very start.
Oh,
Yeah, it wasn't, shoot, it wasn't recording.
Tell me when to go. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that.
So you guys all probably had PTSD, didn't even know it. All that trauma and stuff.
Good chance. Good chance. I don't think the State Patrol ever had any suicides. Where was I?
The wall jumper.
Wall jumper. Thanks. I thought I had to go back to the beginning. But anyway, so I get down there and I stop the motorcycle and I start walking to the car with my flashlight and I see a pair of feet and I thought, hey, come on out. At that time I heard a heavy thump behind me and somebody jumped off the roof of a car onto the hood of the car and got in behind me and put a knife up against my neck. And so I kind of, I said, yeah. I said, what do we need to talk about here? I said, obviously, I said, you are doing something besides jumping the wall. And he says, "You will not take me in." I said, "Well," I said, "I might have to." And I said, "By the way, that officer over there," and he looked. And when he did, I elbowed him and knocked the wind out of him, got him down on the ground, pulled my gun, and told him that you just assaulted the police officer. And I said, "The problem of it is," I said, "I'm on a motorcycle, not a car. So I said, I'm going to have to get the chain out of the saddlebag and drag you to headquarters." And his eyes got pretty big, thinking I was serious, but obviously I wasn't. I got 2 foot soldiers to come down to get him. We went down and did the paperwork. Then I was in Thornton city limits, just finished up an accident in my area, just trying to get off the road to do these reports. They're long, drawn out reports, and it takes a while to do it, and you got to draw diagrams, so you got to be steady. And so I'm doing my accident report, and I hear a crash. So I look up, and I just see the finish of a pickup running into the right side, the driver's side of another car. So I got on the radio and I said, "Denver," I said, "notify Thornton that looks like a crash, probably no injuries, northbound Washington, 88th. So I go over and I get in behind him, and just as I do, the pickup takes off. And I said, God, a chase. So I said, "Denver, be advised that I got a rabbit," and I said, "Texas plate such and such." I said, "Notify Thornton, I'm going to need someone to back me up and help me make this stop." So we're going through residential area, and he finally stops. And I didn't have backup yet, and I walked up to his window, and it had a very dark window. And I'm standing out there just with my flashlight, waiting for him to roll down the window, and there was a snub-nosed 38 pointing at me when the window came down. And again, I got a lump in my throat, and I said, "Boy," I said, "for a minor crash," I said, "you're taking this way too serious." And I said, "If you can hear what I hear in the background," I said, "the cavalry's coming." I said, "You're not going to get very far." I said, "I got your license plate, got the description," and I said, "now I'm going to know how many people are in there. Plus, if you shoot me, it's just going to get worse. Plus," and here's another story I just love. It's kind of like the wall jumper. I said, "You're not going to get very far with that fender because it's going to cut into the tire, and you're going to have a flat tire." Stupid guy looks. And when he said, "There ain't no damage," I said, I got my 357 in his ear. I said, "Now, your gun is mine, or you're going to have part of mine." Boy, he just let me have his pistol real quick. Well, I had to write up an incident report, and when I did, my report went into headquarters, and there was a bill, or there was a law that was being introduced on darkness of windows, and how dark a window could be, and what was going to be legal. So I got to go down and testify in front of this committee about how dark this window was, and I never was part of the opacity of the window, but first and last time I ever got to testify in front of a court. Any other stories that you can think of?
Did they ever change that?
Yeah, they did, but I think it's been repealed by a lot because most of your factories are coming out with dark windows now.
I see dark cars all the time.
Yeah.
There's no way you can see
Yeah.
who's driving. I got a quick question for
Sure.
you. Regarding speeding, was there ever an excuse that was more likely to get a driver out of a ticket that you encountered?
Oh, there was a lot of excuses, and there was a lot of risque maneuvers by the girls who thought maybe if they could
Flash.
wiggle them, they might get out of it. One gal, speaking of that, I went up, told her why I was, stopped her, and I needed her paperwork, and I went back to the car. When I came back, the blouse was pretty open, and I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I would hate to testify in court how you looked when I stopped you and how you look now." "Oh," she says, "no." And so she went off with her little ticket. Another gal was fine when I stopped her, and just crying to beat the band when I came back with a ticket. I said, "Ma'am," I said, "please." I said, I'm sorry that you're upset, but I said, if you keep crying, I said, you're going to get my ticket wet, and I'm going to start all over. Well, you guys are rude. I said, no, ma'am, I said, we've just seen it before. And that didn't go over well. We couldn't be nasty, we couldn't wear mirrored glass, stuff like that. But I suppose if any one of them complained, I would have to answer for my way of talking to them, because we're supposed to be professionals. But sometimes dealing with stupid, you just really have to do something, say something. So, anybody else got any questions?
I have one, Bart. When I used to volunteer for the police department, it's been a while, but many of the officers at that time were former military that were military police and switched over. But from what I know about you, your Navy duties had nothing to do with law enforcement. So what made the switch?
Why'd I go? My brother-in-law. My sister's husband was a Colorado State Patrolman when I went into the Navy, and when I would visit with him, he was out in the brush, and I just really liked what I was seeing, and my next door neighbor, who gave me my last ticket that took my driver's license away, and it was legal. I could have a suspended driver's license before I get all these hate mails. But I lost my driver's license. But my next door neighbor was a highway patrolman. I grew up with his son, and he was just a pure gentleman, and he did his job when he was a law enforcement.
So that planted the seed for you to.
Well, and I talked to him before I went in, and he gave me some tips and stuff like that. But law enforcement and EMS are just underrated. They're underpaid. I got paid $727 a month, and I bought a house and a new used car, and I was the only one working. My wife wasn't working; she was raising kids. But $727 a month, and I did get $50 clothing allowance. Everything that we wore except our underwear was issued by the state. Guns, belt, shoes, hat, all that stuff, and it was really a good career.
What year was this?
What year? I started out as 1973.
Okay.
When did you retire from the police?
I retired up here in Fort Collins as a sergeant. I got promoted up here, and I retired in 1990.
They still have revolvers when you?
They were going over to 9mm at the time I was separating out. I had a wheel gun for the entire career. So started out with a 38 Police Special 5-shot, and then I went to a Smith & Wesson 6-shot, and then I went to a Colt Python 357, and then matter of fact, when they went away from the Smith & Wesson Model 66, we were offered to buy our service revolvers, and so we did that and did all the proper paperwork, because you don't want to have some agency come into your house and find a cop gun in your house,
Right.
you know. And that's another thing. The officer that killed when I first started my story, Tom Carpenter, they kept his weapon, and we found it. We didn't. The Highway Department in New Mexico found it about 9 years after his death, and it had been bought and sold 7 times, and nobody ever saw the initials Colorado State Patrol on it. And somebody finally pitched out the window. Why they did that, I don't know.
So do you know how they're equipped now?
Huh?
Do you know how they're equipped now?
With weapons?
Yeah.
9mm, I'm assuming.
Okay, but any rifles?
Oh,
automatic?
I'm sure they got automatic rifles. I'm sure they got shotguns. When I was on, we carried a Model 870 Remington, and it had a folding stock, and we had it under our legs. Our calves would actually touch the weapon, and we had a release button up on the spotlight, on the left spotlight. So if we needed to get our shotgun out, we would push the button, get our left leg out, go down and grab it. It had a pistol grip, grab the shotgun, and bring it right up. And now I've got a ready to go shotgun, and there's always one cranked in the rounds, or in the chamber.
I mean, you gotta be outmanned
Oh, well,
anymore.
speaking of outman and your question about the wheel gun, we was at a competition, State Patrol was at a competition with Game and Fish, and for high score and bragging rights, stuff like that. Well, the Game and Fish had automatics, and we still had the wheel gun. So when you would change positions, it was pull trigger 6 times, eject, reach down here, find 6 more, get it up there, get rid of your keeper, and now automatic 9. So we were outgunned time-wise, but we were better shots, and they put the two. But
Revolvers always seem more accurate to me.
well, with an automatic, you're just pulling the trigger, and you're hoping your bullet goes somewhere.
Right.
With a wheel gun, when you shoot, you're actually looking down the sight. And now, if you watch anybody train, when they're training, they're firing right here. There is no aiming. They're firing from chest level. So all that's changed. I went to qualify when I got my concealed weapon permit, and I got my gun out, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm aiming." "Oh, that's archaic, that's old school stuff." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm old school." So he tried to shoot me, and it took me a long time to even find the target, let alone hit it. But no, automatics are the way to go, and I'm sure if not every patrol car's got some sort of an automatic machine gun in it. That not related to me, but anybody seen that reproduction of the movie out in California where the 2 or 3 guys were body armor from head to toe in Los Angeles, and they shot I don't know how many officers, and they took hundreds of rounds, hundreds of rounds. Well, that's reality. They can do that, and we can't win. You would have to have what they call back in the old days a M79 grenade launcher, put it right in his chest and see if it would go off or knock him back.
They had they made sheet metal sleeves for themselves, so even their arms were bulletproof.
Yeah. Ankles.
Yeah, their legs. The one guy that they finally got down, I think they hit him inside the groin. It was actually
One got it in the neck too.
and he actually lay there and bled to death. And they sued the officers because they said he let him bleed to death.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, the cop's guilty until proven guilty. The victim is innocent until proven guilty. So we've always got the law against us. I'm glad for body cams today. I really am, because if you're a good cop, you won't mind wearing a body cam. If you're a bad cop, you're going to worry about turning that thing on. And I've already heard stories about the body cam wasn't on, and you wonder why wasn't it on. But there's all kinds of lawsuits against officers for police brutality. Now it's pretty much discrimination, ethnic, all kinds of stuff. Now, it's one of those situations where now you don't know if it's a him or her, they, them, any of that kind of stuff. And I stopped a what? And when I got the driver's license, I said, "Sir," I said, "the reason I am not a sir. You will call me them." And this was in the 70s.
Wow.
This was in the 70s. I said, "Well, them are in a lot of trouble." And I said, I'm going to write you a ticket, and them can go to court and fight it. "You're being funny." I said, "No, you told me to call you them." And that's exactly what I'm doing. And so them never took me to court. So I'm assuming that them decided that they was going to pay the ticket instead of go in and have me talk about them. But that's what's happening today. It really is. The gender situation is something else. Getting off topic. Any other questions?
Well, you're such a personable person. You're a people person, and it seems like a state patrolman is such a lonely existence in the car all day by yourself. And then when you do interact with people, it's usually not a friendly interaction.
A positive thing.
A positive thing. It's not Did that play on you at all?
Well, yeah, my friends were cops. My friends were firefighters. That's who I could, if I ever went to a bar with a civilian, the civilian would, and this happened to me, the civilian would say, I will drink as many as my state trooper friend. Because when he got caught for drunk driving, he said, well, my state trooper friend had sex and I had sex, why ain't he in trouble? So it might not happen like that, but yeah, when you're, and we never had partners in our patrol cars, you know, we were always by ourselves, and you're in the rural area, you think of outlining areas of the metro area, you didn't have backup. You know, in the metropolitan area, you had backup. I had Denver, Adams County, Thornton, Federal Heights, Westminster. I had all those in the area. Didn't have communication with them. All my dispatcher had to do was hit one button and get onto another radio, and then get my location, and I would have backup, and that really helped because.
Did you ever have to fire your weapon during all those years?
No, as we say, never had to drop a cap. I pulled it on several, and one was the motorcycle, and one was another chase, and I had a kid that was a rookie who had just got released on his own after his training with his senior officer, and we're chasing. It was his chase, and I get in and I help get the thing come to a stop, and I get in front of the guy, and I got my gun on him, and it's out, pointed at him, and this rookie's over here. Well, he's got his gun out. Okay. So afterwards I said, don't look at what I'm doing. Look what the bad guy's doing, you know. The bad guy's going to shoot you while you're looking at me to see if I pull my weapon. But that's lack of experience, you know. And I'd been on probably 15 years by that time, so I was seasoned, and this kid was brand new, and he needed to be trained, you know. You don't, the academy is one thing. But when you get out in the real world, that's totally different. When you're in boot camp,
I was just getting ready to say, I was thinking the same thing.
and when you're in boot camp, you're taught how to shoot your weapon. But when you're in the jungle, there's nobody saying, okay, lock and load, here we go. You do what you got to do. So it's you learn an awful lot about how to deal with situations when you're on your own.
How much did your faith have to do with the way you did your job?
It had a lot, and it bothered me because I was the rookie and I couldn't go to church on Sunday. I was always working, and so when I couldn't get service because I was working, I would there was Bible studies that I would get in touch with, but I'd go talk to my minister in my hometown, wherever I was stationed, and just talk Bible. But there was times in chases that I literally prayed. I said, "Don't let my experience fail me, because we know where he's going. He don't, which is good. But we have to slow down for every intersection because." We're vulnerable. We're at fault if we ever hit anybody. If we go, even if we got red lights and sirens, you know, we are at fault. Most likely, we will be exonerated because if it's a justified going to an accident, chases, you're probably going to get a little bit of trouble because you don't have to chase that guy through 5 counties, you know. But if you have to get to 2 counties to get to your accident, then you're probably going to be running red lights and siren. Motorcycle is the worst thing to run red lights and siren because you can't be seen. You're a car or a truck or a fire truck, they can kind of see you. But a motorcycle, you're just a little blue dot going through a line of cars. So when you get to an intersection, you literally stop and make sure everybody sees you before you take off again.
I've seen where 2 fire trucks were going to a scene, and they met at an intersection, and one fire truck T-boned the other and just flopped over.
Well, and here again, that's I haven't seen fire trucks do it, but I can believe it. But that's what happened with a lot of volunteer firemen. They would meet the intersection, run into a scene trying to get there, and volunteer firemen didn't have training. I mean, they might have firefighting training, but they don't have driver's training. And I used to work with the National Defense, National Driving School. It's been long enough ago, but I would train firefighters and ambulance drivers and get them certified as safe drivers, to get them certificates, and I told every one of them, I said, if any one of you have an accident, I'm coming to get your certificate. I'm tearing it up. My name on there, you know. But no, back to your faith. I needed it. It came into play probably when I was looking at an accident scene, knowing that there was all the carnage that we saw. But I'm glad I was raised right, and I did have faith, because it probably saved me more than once.
Do they have chaplains on the police force?
No. I got some vanity here. I'm gonna pass these pictures around, showing you I was slim, because somebody was looking for a wide-angle lens earlier, and I want to show, if he'd have caught me 50 years ago, I wouldn't have had to have that wide-angle lens.
Hair too.
Oh, yeah, I had. They're not the best pictures in the world.
This guy pulled me over.
That guy pulled you over, huh? But no,
Old school.
yeah,
Yeah, wow.
I got a picture of me with one of those cars in there.
That's cool.
Fury, right?
Fury 1.
Oh, wow.
So it was a lot of fun. Being a motorcycle officer was probably the best 10 years of my career. I just had, number one, I had a lot of respect. Speaking of respect, when we was driving Harleys, the Harley's not a real fast motorcycle. It's really heavy. And when we went to Kawasaki was really a snappy motorcycle, and we practiced. We first got the 900s, and when we got the 900s, they weren't police bikes. They were just civilian bikes that we dressed out a little bit, put saddlebags on them, and the toe heel shifters, and the footboards. Well, I was down at the State Fair when I got my first opportunity to ride a 900, and I took it out to the state, or to the dormitories for the college where most of us were staying at the time. And on the way back, there was a stretch for about a mile, just straight and flat. And I thought, it's time to find out what this motorcycle will do. So I wrapped her up to about 6 or 7,000 RPMs, and I didn't pop the clutch. I let her go, and man, I popped the clutch on second. And I had my strong hand on the throttle, and I must have turned it just a little bit, because when the wheel came down, it went like this. Well, I sucked up that seat between my cheeks, and they call it 9.9 pucker factor, and I pulled over and stopped, put the kicks down, and said, you and I are friends. You are the boss. I ain't doing this again. I never had a motorcycle pop the wheelie on that, but that 900 did.
My dad had a KZ1000 that I'd ride.
Well, you saw a KZ1000 in there.
I had that up to 110 one time.
Yeah.
And that kind of starts getting your attention.
I buried a speedometer on my Harley Davidson. It goes from 0 to 100, and then it goes down. There's the word police spatial on the speedometer, because it's a police bike, and I put it between the E and the S. I don't know how fast that was,
Probably
but
110.
it was past 100. But it went all the way. But so anyway.
Thanks, Bart.
Denny, thank you for asking me to speak. I enjoyed it, and
Yeah, it was great.
had a lot of fun. Brad, thank you for taking it.